Hi everybody, how are you doing? Namaste. So this is a little bit more on intuition, part 2, let's say. Intuition is really interesting. I've noticed that I think we have talents when it comes to intuition. I think that many of us know when certain things are or aren't going to happen. And as you reflect on your life, you might start to see those patterns. So for instance, I seem to be quite good at knowing when somebody's going to be where they say they are. You know, if you arrange to meet someone or something to happen, I pretty much always know if that's going to happen or not, or if that's not going to happen or not. And as you get more confident of your intuitions, that, you know, you become more, you listen to it more. It's quite simple actually, you just listen to it more and you begin to learn to trust it. So some of the other things about intuition that I wanted to look at, go a little bit deeper with, is that one is about emotions, and we did touch on it I think before in the last video, is how your emotional state is not exactly the same as an intuition. So, you know, sometimes you say, well, I've got a really good feeling about this. Often, you know, it might be if you're in a dating situation, that's quite a classic one, isn't it? You know, you meet somebody or you see somebody have an interaction, you're like, oh, I've got a really good feeling about this. Maybe you go for a date and, you know, it's all exciting and so you can sort of interpret that as my intuition is saying that this is going to be a really good thing moving forward. But then, you know, we all know this one, something happens, you feel disappointed, you've been let down, turns out the guy, girl isn't what you thought they were, and actually that lands quite hard on you, and afterwards you think, oh God, I had a really good feeling about that. And that's because that was an emotional reaction. That was a feel-good hormone, wasn't it? You know, you were with them, they were making you light up. Your energy, the energy between you two was really good, and you were feeling that excitement as well, and that sort of the unknown always gives us a bit of buzz and a bit of a fizz, doesn't it? But actually that's not the same as intuition. Intuition, as I mentioned before in the last video, is very clear and concise. And when you have an intuition, although often we might, especially when we're doing led meditations and things like that, or visualizations, we might sort of encourage that intuitive sense by saying, you know, looking for a picture or looking for a word. But actually, when an intuition arrives, especially in our day-to-day normal life, it arrives uncolored by anything. It's a sense of knowing, and it comes in its own language, and that language, of course, is the language of the quantum or the field. So as we spoke about before, we've learned to relate to the world through our senses and through our teachings, you know, what our parents have handed down to us and so on. So we have a specific language, but the language of quantum, or the language of the field around us, the energy field, the divine consciousness around us, is not subject to those limitations. You know, you ask anybody who has a experience of samadhi, which is experience of unity, oneness in meditation, samadhi or nirvana, okay? You know, often they'll say words do not do it justice. I don't have the words to describe that experience for you. It is beyond words. And I can, you know, so they pull down words to try and reflect a bit of this, this expansive state, but they say it just doesn't do it justice. It doesn't do it justice. Words do not cannot explain, I cannot explain this state to you. So the language of our intuition is the same language of the field, and that is a language which is not limited by these words. So when you get an intuition, it has to be unpacked. So it has to go through the brain for us to understand it. Otherwise, it's just going to be left there. So if the intuition arrives at the heart, and the heart field has, the heart itself, the organ has sensory neurons. So they've discovered that the heart itself has memory and is able to interpret information before the brain does. So they've done scientific experiments on this. So if you're interested in this science, go to Heart Math, and there's lots of fascinating information about the heart that they've discovered over the last few years. They're an institute based in the States. Anyway, the other thing is that the heart has its own expansive field around it, which is separate to our aura field. Okay, so the heart, so say the heart has an intuition, and I feel that intuitions arrive at the heart, they're also at the third eye, and they're also at the gut. Now, once you have one of those intuitions in this language that we cannot fathom, a sense of knowing, a sense of, it then has to go up to the brain, if you like, and the brain is our decoding device. So it goes up to the brain, and the brain says, okay, right, so the nearest we've got to this is, this intuition is that, okay, let's say you suddenly have unpacked the intuition that shows you a picture of yourself as a chef, okay? And you're in a restaurant cooking happily, and so your brain has started to assign pictures to that, and a feeling to that, an emotion to that. And often that first unpackaging, that the decoding has a good feeling about it. Okay, but let's say this emotion gets put on it, but it's like it's almost like a snapshot you will get initially, and it's usually a positive one, and it's almost as though I almost see it like that this positive snapshot is like the carrot that's being dangled in front of you. It's like, look, it could be this, it could be this, and then not so long into it. So once you've clocked the intuition and you've thought, that makes me feel good, that's got a bit of energy behind it, my frequency is kind of vibing well with this. Now, okay, so let's unpick it a bit further. And of course your brain loves to unpick, and it likes to get into its linear, logical, sequential way of being, i.e. it's much more of a comfort zone for the brain and the ego. So the ego is our sense of I, and it keeps us, we'll need an ego because it helps us to realize that we are separate, which of course in the big spiritual perspective we're not. However, it's quite a useful thing, the ego. The problem with the ego is that we allow ourselves to be completely convinced by the ego, and the ego is working and living in the confines of this sensory perception, if you like. So you've got this carrot, it's looking really good, there you are cooking away, and then you start to unpack it, and your ego comes in and it starts to throw in a load of stuff. So it throws in, of course you can't do that, you'd have to jack in your job, then your family would be insecure. Of course you can't do that, you're not good enough to do that. And it starts to throw in all the negatives, and it throws in all the things that are going to trip you up on your way, all the, I can't do this. And so if you're not careful, that intuition, which is brightly shining over here, is going to get completely sabotaged by your ego, which is dwelling in this, sensory, here and now, material, logical world. Okay, however, if you recognize that, so if you're quick off the mark and you recognize that, So you get the carrot, da, 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 and then you get the energy that comes with that. Oh, that's really exciting. Yes, I could do that. And then you observe the ego and its little, right, I'm going to throw this at you, ha ha ha, throw this at you. You start to notice that. Yeah, no, I sit in my sovereignty, my divinity. I lift my own vibration. I see you, ego. I see what you're trying to do. And thank you so much for trying to keep me safe. Because the ego, you know, that's what it's trying to do, is keep you safe. It doesn't like change. And an intuition is always going to be about change. It's always going to be about moving you forward. So the ego doesn't like that. I love you, ego. Thank you so much for, you know, keeping me safe. However, I choose to be brave, and you need to be brave here, to be brave. And actually, I'm going to implement some steps to, you know, to start to actualize this intuition. Now, the other thing is, okay, these, so you might get this, so in this scenario, in the chef scenario, you've got this, to say, this carrot is looking fantastic, da-da-da-da. So you might have that initially, and then what's going to happen, as you've sent out the message to the universe, like this is, you know, this is what I'd like to happen, the universe is not going to bring it to you in the way that you would bring it to you, or that you would think was logical, sensible, and linear, because it's working from a quantum perspective, a 5D, 12D, whatever you want to call it, you know, higher meditative 0 point field. Is working from that perspective and not from this limited perspective. So what tends to happen is that you might then get signposts, all right, but you don't get signposts one after the other in that, you know, list type way. So say you're just wandering around in town, maybe you're in the town, wandering around, and you get this feeling like, yeah, actually, I feel like I want to go into that bookshop. So you wander into the bookshop, and when you're in there, you're not really sure why you're in there, but you've gone with it, and then you're led to a particular shelf, and maybe a book catches your eye. Sometimes even, you know, in those scenarios, books kind of fall out on you, you know, that can happen too. So something catches your eye, you look at it, and at that point even, it may not be clear at all why you stood there with that book in your hands. Maybe you like the colour of the book, you know, it might be as simple as that. And then maybe you look at the back and you think, and then anyway, you think, well, I'll get it. You know, it's held your interest enough for you to buy it. You buy it, take it home, unpack it, and then just forget about it. Okay? So maybe 4 months later, you see the book again, where you've put it, or maybe you put it away, and you pick it up. Oh yeah, I never even looked at that book. And then you might just be flicking through it, and then you're drawn to something in the book. Maybe there's a chapter or paragraph or something, and you realise it's about a certain chef, okay? And you're looking, okay, and you know about that chef, and then you notice at the bottom of that there's like a cooking school, and you think, oh gosh, that's quite close to me actually. Anyway, something sort of lodged in your mind, put it down, and then a bit later on you decide, I'll just check out that cooking school, you know, just see where it is. And then chances are, in this scenario, turns out that they do courses, and that they've got a course for you, and it's starting quite soon, and you can afford it. So this is often the way it works. It doesn't work in the way that we think it's going to. Okay, and it certainly doesn't give you it in one hit. And often you can end up from here to right over there, to right over there, to, you know, people dropping things into conversation. It's quite exciting. It's a bit like, you know, like a treasure hunt. And I think that's the way it's really good to look at it, actually. It's like you don't know what's going to happen, but it's really magical. It can take you all over the place. So that's often the way in which it will work. Not exactly how we think it's going to work. So, I think I think that's probably some of the main things I wanted to say today. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope you've enjoyed it, and as ever, let me know. Click subscribe, all that stuff, and maybe we'll come back again and talk about some practical exercises you can do to help ignite your intuition further. Namaste.